Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, welcome. We are just getting everybody admitted into the session. We do have our presenter with us, Matt Smith. He will be discussing visioning today. Hello, Matt.
Hello, Sue. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Matt.
Two more minutes and we will get started. Matt, if you want to share and bring your PowerPoint up.
Yeah, I'm going to do that after we have kind of our welcome, I think.
Okay.
Kind of what we were talking about, I think.
Yep. Well, it looks like we have everyone in. There's no one in the waiting room. We'll give it just another minute.
You don't see your cat until you start a presentation.
Yep.
I'd like to introduce everybody to Howler.
Hello. Oh.
He's like our cat dog. If you're not paying attention to him, he scratches your leg. It's terrific. It's one of those downsides of Zoom that they just don't tell you about.
One of the things we want to do is make sure everyone has their club next to their name so we know what club you're from. So if you could rename yourself if you haven't done so already. It is 8:55, so I would like to introduce Matt Smith. Matt is chair of the visioning team for Rotary District 7090. Matt, you have the floor.
Thanks, Sue. So, and welcome everybody. And I guess I would just like to say, thank you for choosing this particular session when there were kind of so many choices in this virtual district training world. So, and Sue and I were chatting a little bit before the meeting and kind of going, wouldn't it be interesting to know why you chose the Vision to Action session? So if you could throw your answer to that into the chat box. And so Sue can kind of monitor that. And then there's a second question to that, which is ultimately, if we knock it out of the park, what would you all love to get out of this training? So just a single bullet would be great, because that would be, 14, 15 or so bullets. So, and then with that, what we thought, one of the joys of Zoom is that it doesn't have to be a canned presentation. So we have tons and tons of slides and examples and all that other stuff. And I guess what I would love to do is kind of the presenter facilitator is customize, kind of that offering to the biggest audience. So, and touch on all the little bits. So please chat away. So question number one, why did you choose this session over the others? And B, what would you love to receive? New Rotarian, new members, try to learn. All right, those are awesome. Anybody else still typing? All right, 30 more seconds or so. I should have had some background music all kind of lined up for this. Lesson learned for next time, Sue.
Right, next time we'll have some smooth jazz or something going on.
Exactly, kind of, in the background with a countdown timer. So yeah.
Yep, get the mood and flow going.
You could sing.
Oh, no.
Well, that would be lovely.
No, not on my part. Mm-mm.
There are singers in the family, and one of them is not me. All right, so it seems pretty diverse in regards to where everybody's kind of coming at this. So I will take a shot at a summary, and kind of, it looks like there's a couple of new folks that are just kind of, on the early stage of their Rotary careers and looking at, hey, what is this vision to action thing, and how can we get it more used in our club? There's some incoming leadership that's looking to engage the membership and have a wonderful year. There's the idea of how do we get the club kind of more aligned, I think. So kind of focused on a single plan rather than a whole bunch of random plans. And then another request, kind of a couple others, more specific to membership and increasing membership, and also kind of tying into the world of Rotary International and RI ideas. And, basically, I think the concept of not having to recreate the wheel. So does that sound like a pretty good summary? It's not if you're. All right, cool. So with that, I do have a presentation we're going to run through, but we're going to kind of take that feedback and spend a little bit more time on some of the slides than what we would have otherwise. So bear with me for a second here while I bring this into presentation mode. Rats. Out of order, share screen. That work for everybody? Okay. So one of the big changes within Vision to Action is that it's really interesting what happened in 2020 and COVID and how it kind of blew things up. But for us in particular, in regards to being able to deliver a much better product, it was really great. Because as you know, half of our district is in the US and half of our district is in Canada. And for the most part, the history of this committee is that it was two separate committees. So 2020 basically allowed those two sides of the border to merge and put a lot more horsepower behind this and take the best out of what each of us was doing and combine it and then customize it in ways that that Zoom allows us to do. So we don't have to do 3-hour sessions anymore. We can do 15-minute sessions. We can do multiple sessions. We don't have to drive 3 hours to the other side of the district, right? We can be part of any particular Rotary Club meeting. So really, and then as we were going through this process of consolidation, we were a visioning team or a futuring team, depending on which side of the border you were on. And as we kind of thought about and reflected on some of the work that we had done with different clubs around the district, that there was a missing piece. And that missing piece was really the work, kind of that follow-up, which is to action. So for any of you longer term Rotarians that have been around that have gone through this, the visioning session it's very powerful, but it's a big comprehensive session. It's a 3-hour session with a lot of 3M post-it notes and a lot of voting and a lot of dots. And basically at the end of the session, you ended up with this huge packet of information that the club had to kind of digest and then figure out how to implement on your own. So, and that was the piece that now we're in the process of, no, it doesn't have to be that way. It can be literally a single action that your club wants to accomplish in the next 90 days. And we'll help you build the action plan and we'll help you follow up and we'll be your coach or your mentor or whatever you need. So I think that's the beauty of what we want to kind of show you today. So. This touches on a lot of the bullets that were mentioned in the first chat, so I won't read all of that. Got a nice fancy slide, why clubs engage in the vision to action process. There's, quotes are always interesting to kind of tie into this, right? And so this is not an easy process, right? And I think that's the reason why it's not like anybody is kind of going, hey, I want to not do well. But the idea of planning does on the outside seem like a whole heck of a lot of work. But then the flip side of that is you kind of get this next slide, which is without a plan, you end up a bit like Alice in Wonderland and the Cheshire Cat, and where he's kind of going, hey, Alice, where do you want to go? And she says, well, I don't really know. And then he said, well, then any road will do. And as we think about kind of that work that we do in our Rotary clubs, sometimes we kind of have that same kind of scattered focus. So that's kind of a good thing, maybe an image to leave you with. These are some interesting so we've touched at, and I guess I'll kind of go through and then please stop me along the way, but we've engaged clubs at many different levels over the past year. Some have been multi-session, some have been single session, some have been just with the president-elect, some have been with the board, some have been surveys of the whole club, some have been committees. So what we wanted to do is kind of extract some of that information. And I will read these quotes because I think they're powerful and they bring us to kind of some common ground wrapped around why visioning is important. And the first one, we talk about doing things, but don't move to action. We need something more with who is going to do what. As president-elect, I don't want to be put into a place where I am articulating my goals. I want them to be the club's goals. And that's really interesting because you think about kind of our Rotary cadence and, if you don't have a strategic plan in place that kind of goes to where you ultimately want to be, do you end up in this cycle of it's just the new person coming in, it's just the new person coming in. We don't seem to have momentum. One year we focus on X and the next year's Y. That kind of ties into that previous bullet. And we want to set the table for the presidents and boards of the future. If we had an overall club plan that the club agrees to, it would be easier to recruit future presidents and board members, and then clearly know how their job is to find ways to make it happen. So, which kind of ties to that idea of clarity and alignment, which is so important for all of our clubs to thrive. So those are just a couple of the excerpts from conversations that we hear. So know that wherever you sit, you are not alone. Hopefully this brings a smile to your face. Ann was asking for a joke ahead of time. Maybe we should have put this one up on the screen, but just as an image rather than a joke. So what do we do? I mean, so basically in a nutshell, this is kind of it. We have this basic 3-phase process. So, and really what is visioning and what is vision to action? For anybody, it combines strategic planning. And then, sometimes we ask you to go a little bit bigger, the kind of this dream state and what does the ideal look like? But basically it involves kind of an evaluation of where your club is today. And we'll show lots of different examples based on where people want to go into how what we think we know about our club is very different from what people actually think about our club. So, and then phase 2 is this idea of where do we want to go? So, right, every movement needs a destination. So we help define that. And then phase 3 is connecting the two. So we've got current state, future state, and here you go. Here's a plan to get there. And part of the strategic stuff is that arrow on the bottom, which is the forces causing us to change. So the world is not static. There's a lot of stuff going on. Certainly COVID, reinforced that. I don't know that any of us were planning for something like that and the transition into Zoom, but if we were more agile and adaptable and had some of this stuff in place previously, it might have been a lot easier for clubs to transition more quickly. So what does it all mean? I mean, basically the first thing here is kind of a club commitment. And that club commitment really kind of dives into where your club is and, whoever's leading it and kind of the people inside the club. It's, do we want to get better? Do we have this mindset of growth? And if the answer to that is yes, and then kind of within a small group of people, there's a commitment to move this thing forward, we would love to engage with you. And that's basically the message that you'll hear hopefully throughout this whole thing is that it's our committee's role to serve. We are here, we are customizable, we bring a ton of expertise outside of Rotary, inside of Rotary, to basically serve your clubs on this mission. And and what we find to say first is the commitment. Next is the team. So in forming the team, it's really important to have a champion. A lot of clubs have been choosing the president-elect. There's some good with that. There's some not good with that in terms of kind of a continuity piece and kind of ownership and how that disseminates throughout your club. But say either way, we need a champion, and then that champion, we want them to recruit a team. So, and that team size is generally, it's better if it's a little bit smaller. So like 3 to 4 people somewhere in there as kind of a core steering committee. So, and this is a big difference from the way this kind of worked in the past as well, which was initially we kind of went in and did this, kind of big club survey. And if anybody's taken a Rotary membership survey, you'll know what that looks like. It could be 100 questions, right? With just tons and tons and tons of information. So, and that was, kind of extracting a whole bunch of information going into these big visioning sessions. And you're kind of setting this table from a club expectation thing. And then it takes a long time to react. And that's not necessarily what we thought was positive. Our preliminary assessment is completely customizable. It's, part of those initial conversations that we have. And it can be 3 questions. It can be 30 questions. It can be as many as you want. The teams kind of worked hard to put together different lists of questions where the committee goes through and says, hey, these are the things that we would really love to know. And it can be done multiple times too. I say in the case of Frank and his kind of, pursuit of membership, maybe the first time we kind of dive into this thing, particularly if you don't have a strategic plan, is it's a singular focus just on membership. And hey, it's not 30 questions, it's just 3. Because really what we're trying to do is, something that, is really actionable, that's impactful. Phase 2 is developing the circle of future and best ways to get there. And that's, basically that idea of where do we want to go. So we're going to be doing some of that same things, working with the committee, sending out surveys to specific members, but packaged in a way that, say kind of the committee steering and how it fits the club. So no one size fits all in this thing. And, kind of within this, there's also kind of that little graphic on there. This whole idea of strengths and weaknesses and playing to your strengths and understanding your community. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can help you do. So we've seen that one before, but just to kind of reiterate. So now we're kind of at phase 2 here and through that. And then phase 3 is putting it all together. And this is the other tricky bit. I mean, at the basic level for a plan, it's who does what, when, and how are we progressing on that mission, right? We've all seen those Excel spreadsheets. We all probably do them at work, or just kind of keep them around because they're so much fun to have. But there's lots of different ways to do this, and I think that's another thing that we can come in and kind of help the club and help the club leadership put things in place so that they're not too responsible and accountable. And by that, I mean, I think, what we've observed across multiple Rotary clubs is that we have we're a not-for-profit group that is driven by volunteers. So none of us are paid. And so there really is kind of a stigma wrapped around, I don't want my name on the line of this spreadsheet that says that this action has to be done in 2 weeks. Yet at the same time, if we don't have that, then we don't get any movement. So there's this kind of odd tension in there. So, and I think that's the piece where to say, hopefully we help with that process and can kind of facilitate where things get stuck. And that's this. So kind of that facilitating and where things get stuck. Now, the other cool thing that we've done is we've recruited the assistant governors to be part of this process. So the assistant governors know the clubs the best. So, and what we've also learned is that clubs really like to operate autonomously. They don't really like, I don't know, somehow, some way, district support is often thought of as big brothers watching. And we're very cognizant of that. And, we want to be your mentor and coach. We don't want to be the oversight committee. So, but yet at the same time, in order to get stuff done, there's got to be who's going to do what when, and and what happens where we start to slide that has to take place if there's going to create movement. So assistant governors are really good at that. So let's see here. We've got some information on our committee, Vision to Action Committee. We are all like you. We're past presidents. We're past and future district governors. Let's see, and Ann Birmingham was leading the Canadian effort in Vision to Action up until very recently. She's still an active participant on the team, believe it or not, even in her new role. But let's see, other folks that participate on this are some names that you know, and hopefully very, very respected Rotarians. But Karen Oakes and Sue Cerny is part of the team, and Ralph Montezano, and it's just folks that we default to smile and we're here to serve. So that's what I can share about that. Some other stuff that we hear. So getting this process started, right? I mean, sometimes it'll kind of be, oh, I don't want to go through this effort. We don't really want to do this. We've done it in the past and it didn't really work. And we can help you overcome that. And I think on this slide, the one thing that I would love everybody to kind of take away is the question of what happens if you do nothing? What is the cost of doing nothing? And compare that then to, as we think about what this effort is and what that is also going to be. So I would also like to leave somebody with kind of this idea that, to a certain extent, I served on the board of the YMCA for a bunch of years. And the story I'll tell is that the 1st of January, there were always a bazillion new people that joined. And what we learned over time is that 90% of those people never came back after January 31st. So you think about that and kind of go, well, I joined a health club. I want to get healthier, right? I'm paying this money and you don't go back. Why is that? And, there's a lot of reasons for that, but then there's another piece to this puzzle that we learned, which is if you signed up during that first week to be part of either a group class, or if you signed up for private fitness lessons, that 90% went down to 30%. And that's what we're here to help. We're not, all that we are coaches, we're facilitators, and we're here to help in this process. And just like if you join the gym and try to go it alone, it's highly likely that you're not going to succeed in your mission. And we can make that probability of success a little bit higher for whatever that means to you. So I've got some plans. So Niagara on the Lake Club just went through the full process. So some examples out of Niagara on the Lake. And then I've also kind of got a spinoff into another presentation because I want people to kind of start thinking about some things. So I'm going to go through this relatively quickly. And if there's anything that anybody wants to kind of stop on, please stop, put something in the chat for Sue. And then unfortunately, in my current view, I can't really see the chat box all that well. But Sue will then flag me to kind of stop and we'll go through stuff. So the Niagara on the Lake Club, we went through and so as part of this process, there's kind of throw out the bad, keep the good. And so in that keeping the same, here's a couple things that they thought were, really important to them. This is, Frank, could you chime in on this one? Is this the new Rotary overall vision statement? This was kind of something that Ann shared with me, but it really, it's impactful. So our club becomes our area's most fun and engaged service club, impacting the health wellness of those in our local community and beyond. Or was that something that was specifically tailored?
No, it's not the RI vision statement. I haven't seen this one before, to be honest with you, Matt. But I like it.
Yeah, right. It's nice and kind of focused and impacting health and wellness in our community. So
yeah, like ours is, to help clubs be the best that they can be, as you know.
Awesome. Thank you.
I like this.
As Ann mentioned briefly in the intro into this, so four priorities for Rotary moving forward. And within all of this, this is kind of where planning can really help the clubs kind of thinking about all 4 of these quadrants. So in increasing our impact and expanding our reach and enhancing participant engagement and increasing our ability to adapt, we're working on the what and the how. So, and that's in the planning sections of all this. So I guess plus we're also working on kind of the goal within all of these things. What are we ultimately aspiring to? So on priority 1, increasing our impact, what do we want our club to do to make a difference? This was some other examples from some recently led sessions is what you're going to see next. Part of the process is polling. So just like we ended the first session, it's real-time surveys. So it's really, again, really customizable, really real time to get at everybody that's participating in these sessions. You kind of zing, you got great information right away. So in this particular case, we're poking at impact. And what the club decided was, number one here, invite someone from District Health and Wellness team to do a presentation at one of our upcoming meetings. Pretty actionable. And number three, also, that was the number one choice for all the participants. Identify 3 other potential partners who could work with us in a health and wellness project and invite each to be a club speaker so that we can assess fit. Specifically, in an effort to address membership, the club was interested in going into and understanding these 4 specific areas. So classifications, demographics, what's overrepresented, what's underrepresented, the idea of holding more days of action events to encourage more members, getting businesses more involved, and actively identifying and reaching out to alumni, because that's something that, you know, sometimes we miss. We have some people that, you know, are active within Rotary, end up leaving for one reason or another, and then shame on us, we don't reach back out. Within the world of public image, public image is another thing. It strikes us, you know, that we see when we're working across different Rotary clubs is that sometimes we're not very good at tooting our own horn. And, you know, and where the world has gone, and if you remember kind of back to one of those early slides and kind of thinking about those outside forces, the world and where we're all evolving to is more real time, more social media, more, you know, kind of engagement through all of the social platforms, and that's just where people are, and that's just a reality. So, and if we're not adjusting to that, then, you know, we're not going to garner quite as much attention, and if we don't garner as much attention, then our impact and our membership is going to suffer, which oftentimes is what we see. So in this particular case, in making an effort to create 3 press releases or articles about events, get some stories out on Facebook, and consider creating a policy that outlines kind of recognition you'd expect. So kind of winding things down on this first presentation, and then I'm going to kick out for a second. We'll let everybody ask questions, and then we've got this other one that's a little bit more interactive and fun. So I wanted to kind of run through this one relatively quickly. In regards to engaging the Vision to Action Committee, it's literally a reach out to me or anybody else on the team to say, you know, we are interested in learning more, and we have introduction materials. We've got, you know, all kinds of different presentation slides that have been put together. And like I say, we've got, you know, batteries of questions. We also have, we're in the process of putting together kind of this really nice idea of best practices. So best practices for what's worked across other clubs. And then also there was the question about RI, and right, how do we tap into that resource? And we're just really starting to explore that, because as you know, I mean, the world of RI, it's massive. So to pull out kind of the critical bits of information so that, you know, so that we can be filters, is something that's on our radar screen. So, and we've kind of heard all of this, and you're going to hear it again, but, you know, in summary, we're here to help you. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a second so that I can see everybody back up on the screen and kind of go, hey, based on what you just saw, All right, if you have any questions, now would be a great time to kind of stop and ask, and feel free to put them in the chat box, or feel free to, just raise your hand and ask away.
Matt, can you talk about the Visioning to Action team and how they could request resources or help from the district?
For somebody reaching into the Vision to Action team, if you're
Yeah,
outside.
So for club members or president-elects or whoever who want to get help with the Visioning to Action process, can you talk about the team?
I sure can. So there's 6, 7 active members on the team. 2 of them are here. So Sue and I are both active members on the committee. Ann Birmingham, Karen Oakes, Ralph Manisano, Trish Hartman. Who am I missing, Sue? Kevin Crosby sometimes moonlights on our committee.
Yeah.
So probably as part of this session, you will have my address and my phone number or email address and phone number. So please feel free to reach out to me. So, right. And I promise that I'll respond to you, probably not within an hour, but within a day. So, and that's probably the best way to get everything started. And the whole thing is that really, just like we showed in the first slide, is just to have that commitment to, we want our club to be better. That's all. Once you have that. Yeah, Frank.
Yeah, Matt, how many of these visioning sessions have you done this year?
We have done 8
Wow.
this year. But of all different engagement levels. I mean, I think and then there's been a whole bunch of people that have inquired that haven't started. So, and then we're trying to figure that out, which is how does it kind of get stuck between inquiry and, we're ultimately going to move forward with this. And I think, what we've learned kind of in that is that, again, kind of that small group and that committee that, kind of has to form up front, they've got to have enough oomph to kind of, move that to the, yes, we want to do that phase. So.
And Matt, can you connect the visioning to the strategic planning process?
I can, is that with Jim? Jim had his hand up for a second.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jim, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to go in a slightly different direction, Matt. First of all, thanks for the presentation. Very well done. There were some things that I captured out of it that I think will be really useful. But I'd like to get you to talk a little bit more about what I might call overcoming the initiative or overcoming the momentum part of this. And in my time period, we've done several exercises in this. They've all been good exercises at the time, but Rotarians being Rotarians, we just keep adding tasks and good ideas onto the pile. And the idea that we might want to leave something behind, given our resource base, what do we have to do what we want to do? That's a trickier thing. We just keep adding good ideas. Could you talk about how you overcome the momentum of leaving dated ideas behind? In particular, those dated ideas that have a champion. And because in some ways, I think we're kind of living in a past world because of champions keeping that with us. Sorry to drone on, but I see you smiling, so I think I've got something that you can tell.
No, it's so true, right? And I think, what we've heard that same story play out in bunches of clubs. So thanks, Jim, for the question. And what I can say is that unfortunately, there's no magic bullet for this particular thing. And it almost ends up being kind of a process of continuous improvement. So it's kind of like a drip. We made it a little bit better. Drip. We made it a little bit better. Drip. We made it a little bit better. And then all of a sudden you wake up, 6 months later and kind of go, ooh, things feel a little bit different around here. But in the day-to-day variation, it's really hard. But the reason I was smiling is because, recently, or kind of at work, there's a story. We're going through this big continuous improvement exercise. And as part of that, our company president asked us all to read the Marie Kondo book called Tidying Up. So in that, so really interesting, right? So she talks about, kind of this Japanese philosophy anyway, maybe a few of you have heard of it, called 5S. But she kind of turned it into this thing where you can kind of organize your house and kind of go, that's interesting. But the first thing, the very, very first thing, Jim, is to sort. So what has to happen before you can do the second bit, which is organize, is to basically do what you were just talking about, which is how do I take 50 things? Because yes, we could possibly do 50 things, right? But when you get really real about it and you put plans to it, you realize, oh man, I ran out of resources on, item number 3 up here, right? And kind of go, look, as a club, we are going to, right, kind of filter this stuff out that doesn't resonate quite as much with us today. That doesn't mean that we're not going to do it in the future. It just means that we're going to slide that into the parking lot for now. And the polling is very, very powerful for that. So, right, so just like you saw in a couple of those slides, there might be 5 things that are up on a list that, hey, these are 5 possible things that we can do to improve membership, right? Let's send it out to the club to vote. And then all of a sudden you start to see, hey, 91% agree with this, 47 agree with that, and only 12 agree with that. And just kind of have to go, look, I mean, the numbers and the data is the data. And that's kind of what we've helped see unify on. Let's just pick 1 or 2 of these things. And then the other thing that I'm trying really hard as part of our committee to do is we used to leave you with this stack of papers that was basically, you needed a small army to go through. And it's kind of this different process now, which is really this idea of focusing and putting plans together to take actionable, effort in all of these things is a singular focus. So start with 1, right? So if there's one area, in that initial survey, it's kind of like go into the Rotary 4 box and go, wow, the number 1 thing for us right now to do is to add 3 new members. Okay, cool. Let's put an action plan together for the next 90 days to just add 3 new members. That's going to be our singular focus for this quarter. And that's really powerful rather than trying to work on 50 different things.
I definitely like the idea of the micromanagement of it rather than the grand plan, because the grand plan so often just gets set off to the side. Well, at least that's my experience. And the idea of it being a continuous process of change, somehow or another getting structured within your club's workings, strikes me as being the way to do this best. So thanks for those ideas.
You're welcome. Yeah, one 90-day kind of club quarterly rock or goal is because you're over the course of the year, then now you're knocking off 4 things and you're building momentum because you're saying, hey, we can actually align on something and we can actually get stuff done. And that helps us become more people of action. Actually, it's people of action making an impact. All right, any other questions before I move on to slide deck number 2 here, which has a little bit more interactive stuff. All right, cool.
If I could just say, Matt, it's Penny calling from Niagara on the Lake. Can you hear me?
I can.
Good. I was fortunate, I'm a new Rotarian, and I was really fortunate to get involved with the visioning process with Ann, Karen, and Dave Barry. I'd encourage other groups to do so. We do many things really great in Niagara on the Lake, but this really just kind of gave us the opportunity to look at those. We sometimes are, overwhelmed by all the good reports that we get on all of the public things that we do, but it gave us the opportunity to look at areas that maybe we never really even thought of before. One of them was increasing diversity in our club. So we have our action plan and we're moving forward. And it was a great professional experience for me as a new Rotarian.
That is fantastic to hear. Thanks, Penny. What a nice testimonial for that. And right, and kind of speaking to that, the Niagara on the Lake process, right? I mean, it was fairly elaborate, but I think customized to what the Niagara on the Lake Club needed, and kind of bringing in the right conversation with the right people at the right time. So if you could kind of speak to any of that, then that would be terrific.
Well, specifically, I guess we did our session over we had a pre-session and we did our evening sessions with breakout rooms, and really tried to use the resources of Dave, Karen, and Anne in terms of their previous experience. But again, I think we do a lot of fun events, we do a lot of community things, but it really kind of shed some light on things that we could be doing that we've just been busy with other things that we are going to focus on specifically. So I think it was a great, again, I would endorse it. It really was a great process for someone particularly who is new to Rotary to find out a little bit more about those tenets and how they may be changing, or not changing so much as really being modified as we move into the future. And as I say, diversity is one of the things that we're going to really work on in our club. Although we come from a fairly homogeneous, environment in Niagara-on-the-Lake. We're generally older, generally retired, but we're going to work on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Penny. Let's see here. Now we're going to share screen again. Do that one. Go into presentation mode. This opening slide kind of speaks a lot to what we're trying to do here. So, and it's we overlook some of the basic stuff in this, but and then hopefully, this will be kind of fun and maybe a bit more interactive and make some things that should be visible, maybe a little bit more visible or in focus. So, but vision to action. So blurry, you put on your glasses and you can see, so you kind of know the corrective action. So, but if it's all blurry, then it's, and you don't have a pair of glasses, then it's really hard. I want to share a story, and it's very personal, and I might tear up during this, and I apologize for that, but I think it's really reference, and then it really goes into kind of Jim's thing about diving in. But I didn't know if I was going to be able to do this as of yesterday afternoon, because my dad's been in the ICU for like 3.5 weeks, and he literally he's on a ventilator and just was diagnosed with ALS. And it's a shitty disease, and his prognosis is not good. But yet at the same time, it was in that diagnosis that there was a degree of comfort and just kind of go, look, at least we know what it is now. And then thinking about that and kind of going, man, it could be so much worse. And now that we know what it is, we can kind of plan for this. And I think, that's the story that I want to kind of, in the bullet points about thinking about what this is and how it really is important, and kind of go, right, really focus on, for us as Rotarians, what matters, what really matters, right? Do 50 things matter, right? Does anybody in our community know us for 50 things, really? Kind of getting really focused on what matters and setting those priorities. And realizing that time is our scarcest and most precious resource, and not taking it for granted, so that, right, we do create this sense of urgency for moving forward. And then just thinking about it, and then it ties in again, kind of that Jim thing, and the idea of if we could just accomplish one thing in 90 days, right, that's super impactful for us as a club and also inside our community, what would that be? And what's holding us back? I mean, let's not wait till next week. Do it today, because, man, I don't know what next week is going to bring. And so, right, that's the very real of why this. And I thought I'd share. And kind of in some of this other stuff, I hinted on this in the last slide deck, but thinking about, so Sue had asked this question about visioning and strategic planning and how does all of this stuff work? And this slide here is really interesting. There's a book that I love, it's called Scaling Up. Vern Harnish is the author, and it's a consulting service called Gazelles. And they have a ton of materials, all available for free, gives it away. But he breaks out strategic planning into strategic thinking and execution planning. I'm going to pause on that for a second and just let you process it. strategic thinking, execution planning. Because that's really what this is, isn't it? Right? Where we think of a strategic plan, we mashed, those 4 words together into 2, but we did it a great disservice. So really, what is strategy? Strategy's thinking, how do we play the game? How do we win? What's going on in the world? What's all this other stuff? And then once you figure that out, then it's putting your game plan together so you win the game. And if you win enough games, then you win the season. So, right. So the 4 aspects, and I can't help but wonder, right? We have this stigma as Rotarians that, oh, it's volunteer, right? So we don't want to put action plans together. We don't want to run this like a business, but yet at the same time, why not? Why not take the best of business, right? So people are really important to us. How do we attract and retain the best people? We live in a competitive world, whether we like it or not. What's our truly differentiated strategy as a club to separate us out from everybody else doing community service, or all of those things that are just taking community time away from people in our community? How do we drive flawless execution rather than this scattered approach? And last, money. We don't really like to talk about money, but it's awful good to have. And as 2020 taught us, you never really know what's going to happen. And if we have money, we can still do good things in our community. So just kind of wanted to share that and thinking about, taking that back to your club. Now, I also want to twist this, so kind of on that theme. So it's Stanley Cup season. Hockey season's kind of winding down. If you're on the US side of the border sitting in Buffalo, your hockey team's not going to the playoffs for like the 25th straight year in a row. It's getting a little frustrating. Right. And if you're on the Canadian side of the border and your team's the Maple Leafs, fortunes are looking up a little bit. But for this exercise, what I want everybody to do is use the chat box and basically imagine you're the new GM of your favorite hockey team. Just chat in there. What's your goal? See the chat. Sue, is everybody done? You're going to have to be my eyes in this.
People are still typing into the chat, Matt. So, but we
Okay.
do have, I will give you what's in here. We want to win games. We want to win the Stanley Cup. We want to build morale.
Awesome. Okay. So yes, I would think somewhere in those lines, right? But fairly well defined. We're going to have, a fair degree of alignment on that. For me, I would vote that if I'm the GM, my goal is win the Stanley Cup, or maybe create a dynasty. Maybe I want to win the Stanley Cup a couple times in a row. So with that goal now, what do you do first? So if you could chat in your answer for what would you do first?
All right. We got to keep the team focused. We got to recruit good players. We want to get the best players, draft the best players for our situation.
Awesome.
Use your strengths, focus on opposition's weaknesses, get leadership, bring in exciting and talented players, develop a team.
Awesome. Really quick, 7 great ideas. Fantastic. Or more than that. There's lots of good ideas. All right. So to kind of now in thinking about this, you're the GM and you're kind of going, all right, I have this option, or I really want to do is I want to, win games. I want to fill seats. I want to win a Stanley Cup, right? What inputs do you need? How do you know that you're, what to make these decisions that you ultimately need? What are those 1 or 2 inputs that are, kind of super critical? This one's a little tougher, but we still should get it, especially if you aligned with, like players.
Money,
Okay. Yeah. We need a budget.
the right mix of players.
chemistry, right? Can't have all our all-stars. Fantastic.
Power advertising, ensure that you have good leadership as a coach and a great leader in the locker room.
Leadership on the team. Awesome. Yes, yes. Yep. Fantastic. All right. Anything else?
Nothing else is coming in right at the
All right.
moment.
Then we'll move on. That was the toughest one. How do you know how you're doing? In hockey, how do you know how you're doing? There's the obvious. I wonder if anybody's got any non-obvious answers. What's coming in, Sue? Where'd she go? Sue, you're on mute. Ah, okay. 1 minute.
She's still muted.
Uh-oh. Technical difficulties, maybe.
Yeah, I see she's muted.
You want one to read it?
Yeah, knock yourself out. Now we got you back. Oh, now you're muted again.
Sorry, I'm here.
How do we know if things are working?
How do we know if things are working? Are you asking me that?
Yeah, it was the last chat question.
Okay. Fans are saying staying for the whole game. Fans are staying for the whole game.
Okay, there had to be other answers.
I do not see that in here.
Oh.
And I apologize. I had to do some technical support. For
Got it. Okay.
I can read it for you. So standings, establish and monitor metrics, winning consistently, ticket sales and media coverage, how many games won, community support, look to the future, stats, check the gate, hashtag,
Yeah.
or quotation,
Right.
one-on sessions, are fans staying for the whole game or running for their cars after this? And how you're doing depends on what your aim was.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Our KPI tracking.
Thanks, Lenore.
welcome.
So yeah, really, really good stuff. And then my last question for you here is, so based on some of those things that you were looking at as your key metrics, right? What, if you're the GM, what do you do if things aren't working out as planned?
Benchmark, KPI tracking. Make hard choices, change direction, new tactics, build for the future, avoid injuries, regroup, look for a new job. If you're
Awesome.
Eugene Melnick, you go on a cruise to the Caribbean. Pivot, re-examine goals.
Yeah.
Make a change in the coaching and plan for a better season next year.
Awesome. If you're on the Buffalo side, right, you piss off your best player, franchise player. I mean, that's So anyway, thank you all for that. And yes, right. So in that exercise, you're kind of like, oh man, if things aren't going quite as planned. Now, again, in a business environment, perhaps you have a few more levers, but maybe some of those hard conversations also have to happen within clubs. And I also realized that, hey, we love 100% consensus, but I also realized that 100% consensus is really rare. So those are some of those choices that as you kind of work through and kind of go, how do you navigate this exactly, right? I think, Jim brought up the example of, there's one or two people that have a pet project and, right? But yet there's 50 people over here that kind of go, you know what, we don't really believe in that. How do you handle that? And some of those, quite frankly, are just, they're hard projects, where you kind of go, we just can't give you the resources right now because we're focused on this or something else. So anyway, now I want you to do the same thing for your Rotary Club, right? So in hockey, that was really easy, but now I'm super curious about your Rotary Club. Can you do the same thing? Within your club, what's your goal? So, and just type one thing down, just whatever comes top of mind. It's not this is more of hey, how can we get some ideas down in 30 seconds type thing.
Doing good in the community, making new members feel welcome, increasing membership, active engagement of more members, refocus on service, diversity and inclusion, more engaged members, more active membership.
So, all right, so let's pick on a couple of those. So doing good in the community, right? So in our hockey example, we were saying win Stanley Cup. That becomes kind of really, easy to judge ourselves against. We either did or we didn't, right? Doing good in the community. How do we know? How do you know that to be true? I guess in general, we're all doing good in our community. It's just one of those kind of, random questions that I think, is, and it hits me at, that Rotary, we have this really hard thing. Yes, service, but what is service? And within our communities, what are we really known for? And, what's our goal? If our goal is to be the best community service organization, right, in our community, what does that mean? Is there an equivalent? If I'm an NHL team, it's pretty easy. At the end of the game, I got 4, you got 3, I win. At the end of a month, I've got 10 wins and 2 losses. That's a pretty good month. But within a Rotary Club, how do you do that same thing? It's really hard, but we should put the effort into that because it's super important, right? So, which then drives that next question, which is based on your goal, what do you do first? So if your goal is doing good in the community, what do you do first?
Matt, so we got some stuff coming in the chat. So provide sweat equity, align your team, find out what the needs are, promotion, develop projects people believe in.
Awesome. Those are all fantastic. So, and I guess the answer is yes. And then to think about, so that gets at this next question back to the inputs question, right? So projects people buy into, impactful, right? What, basically, how would we know that? Where can we go? Where can we get that information from? There's a lot of people in our community. Who should we go out and talk to? They're all really good questions, and it hints at this idea again of, right, we're kind of doing it random. If your club's like my club, we just kind of, we lick our finger, we kind of, put it up in the air and go, geez, I think the community needs this year. But it's kind of like shooting an arrow or shooting a dart at the dartboard for the most part. Better to have actual information. So how do we go out and find that information? And this is another one. I think this is, again, using the hockey example. It's so hard for me. I mean, so I'm, you know, kind of been in Rotary or around Rotary for 25 years and kind of go, right, really at the end of the day, it would be great if we had a scoreboard. How the heck do we know, you know, how we're doing? So are we moving the needle? It's a really, you know, it's a really, really interesting question. And maybe using some of those hockey examples, maybe we can bring some of those into discussions within our clubs. And then the last thing, you know, what do you do if things aren't working out quite as planned? And we all struggle with this. This is one of those big things within Rotary clubs. And I'd love to, right? I mean, please chat some answers. This would be a great place to share, right? Because this is the hardest part, I think, of being a Rotarian. We really want consensus. We really do. But oftentimes we don't get it. And oftentimes if we said we were going to do something and it doesn't get done, you know, what can you do? You don't want to, you know, we're so afraid of, you know, if you piss somebody off, is it so fragile that they're going to leave? Maybe. So does anybody have, please put your comments in the chat box. I'll hang on that for just a minute or so.
Matt, can you restate the question again for me?
So the last question is, what do you do if things aren't working out as planned? So, right, so we have this initiative that, you know, hey, we want to increase membership by 3 members, you know, over the next 90 days, right? And things aren't going quite as planned, right? And right, maybe perhaps it's because, you know, hey, somebody, right, isn't doing what they said they were going to do. Perhaps, you know, some other reason, but it's just not going, you know, as planned, right? What are some of the things that we can do as, you know, incoming or past leadership within the clubs?
Right. So we have ask groups we've worked with in the past to and members who represent various nonprofits on what the current needs are. Assess, document, and find somewhere else you can provide services. Regroup, refocus, revisit your plan. Evaluate outcomes within the community. Open anonymous feedback. Open or anonymous feedback. Regroup, adopt new strategies. Assess the goal. Is it achievable? And then we have with COVID, a lot of our regular fundraisers were not able to happen. So that's why we have to look to see at alternative ways.
So kind of pivoting there, right? It does, but it gets at, and again, kind of thinking about the strategy of this and the cadence, and I'll kind of go back to Jim's question because it's, you know, so relevant. How do we build momentum? How do we do this stuff? And it's kind of, it's that cadence of how often are we checking up on ourselves, right? So if we did have, right, I mean, imagine that scenario, you've got 50 goals that you're trying to accomplish, and we've got kind of these fuzzy metrics in there, and we're not always getting great data, you know, real-time data to, you know, fill in our metrics. So, right, how do we know how we're doing? So then how do we know how to adjust? And if you can go narrow, and if you can pick up 1, 2, 3, you know, maybe a maximum of 5 things that you want to accomplish over the next 90 days, and you get really good at, you know, putting in this is how we're going to judge our success as you're establishing that goal, right? So working things down the path of more like a SMART goal, it can be much more impactful.
I think, Matt, speaking about goals, you know, I've been encouraging, as every other district governor has over the years, clubs to actually set goals in Rotary Club Central. And I do find that those clubs that have a strategic plan or have a vision and a strategic plan and actually set goals are so far ahead of those clubs that don't. You know, they have a roadmap, they know where they're going. Again, if they're reviewing those on say on a monthly basis at a board level or a club level, they're more likely to stay focused and to do good things despite COVID. And I find those clubs that don't set goals, especially this year with COVID, tend to do a lot of floundering.
Thank you, Frank. That's terrific input. And speaking to kind of, that floundering versus success, right? I think, we don't often kind of think about stuff, unfortunately, right? There's a lot of, hey, we'll just kind of keep doing the same. It's been all right, for the last 20 years, it's been okay. But if you're really taking a hard look, right? And I guess this goes back to kind of, it's that story about my dad and kind of, right? I mean, look, we got to do this. If we're committed to this, we got to do it. We got to do it now. So, right, really as a club, what are we doing to, right, shift the curve of the graph? And in shifting that curve, know that this is going to be hard. There are very, very few silver bullets in this thing, right? And no matter what you take on, it's going to take effort. So, right, we might as well get really good at picking those things that are going to be most impactful, and then, kind of magnifying our efforts so that they have that greatest impact. So, right, but just that concept of exponential growth, because too many of our clubs are going in that decline mode, and it's, it's kind of a drip, 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 and we're just keep losing members and losing impact, and, and it's painful to see based on all the effort that we put into this. So as a club, what direction do you want to go? And make that commitment and get really serious about that. And then the message I want to send is that we're here to help. And there's lots of other great resources, as well. And that story of you'll have greater success if you have a coach, right? If you've got somebody, if you take this on your own, you might succeed, but why not? Why not use Rotary International resources? Why not use your district resources? So this is a really interesting, so kind of my last kind of working slides to kind of work through in the presentation here in our last couple of minutes, 5 minutes or so, is this sounds like the easiest, most trivial question in the world, right? Why are we here? Why are we in Rotary? And I'd like everybody to, you don't have to necessarily put it in the chat. Please do if you feel like sharing, but I want you to at least put it down on a sticky note. Because what I can share is that in all of our surveys across all the different clubs and in working with the different clubs, most people think they have a pretty good handle for what's going on within their club. And when the real information comes back, where the club members feel comfortable enough to tell the truth, what people think and then what they find out are two very, very different things. And that's shocking to me for the simple, most, I'd say this most trivial question. So I can't see the chat, unfortunately. I did. So Sue, did anybody throw up, kind of the why are we here? Did anybody put an answer in the chat?
Yes, I did. I put fellowship and serving the community, but responses are coming in. Make our community healthy. A lot of community, improving the community.
Okay.
I'm just going through and trying to pick out. Doing good in the community. People want to do good. Networking with local businesses and community leaders. That's where we're at. Networking,
That's awesome.
doing good in the community is a primary response.
So, and then thinking about that, right? And then the part B of that is, thinking about how most of your club members would respond. And if it's a big, broad, general category like improving community, and one would think that there's probably a heck of a lot of alignment. But what I can share is that, right, think about that for just a second. And if we're going to pick on that, if we're going to pick on, why are we here to improve our community? Go to the next level. Right? Again, this is something to take away from this. This is an exercise for a little bit more reflective thought, but it's challenge yourself to go to the next level and go, let me put some vividness to this. And what does that really mean? Improve community. And it's almost, there's another exercise in the continuous improvement world. It's called 5 whys. And basically this sounds incredibly easy to do, but it's, hey, I've got a problem. And you ask yourself why. You pretend you put your 3-year-old hat on and why. You know,
Matt?
car stopped working. Why? I ran out of gas. Why? Didn't look at the gas gauge. Why? Was too busy, texting on my way into work. Why? Boss is calling me at 7:30 in the morning. Well, that kind of thing, to where you finally go, all right, I finally kind of get at the root of this. And the idea, I guess, my suggestion or a takeaway for you all out of this would be, in thinking about improving community, that's awesome, but it's very, very broad.
Matt?
Yes.
I'm just letting you know you have 5 minutes.
Okay, cool. So, and then we're kind of winding things up here, but creating clarity is not trivial. It's foundational, and it's kind of, it's important, it's kind. And then, because you can't have alignment until you have clarity. What does your club really stand for within the community? Some of our competition within the community service world has that a little bit easier. They specify, hey, we're focused on diabetes, we're focused on blindness, we're focused on, something else. Rotary, for a long time was focused on polio, but is polio, is that important within your community? Kind of up to everybody to figure out what that is. So. Where did I go? This is something I just kind of winding things down here, but Dabo Swinney, who's the coach of the Clemson football team, right? Clemson didn't used to be a very good football team, but now they are, first, second, third, fourth every year in a really, really, really competitive business. I mean, he basically comes in and it's all mindset. And so his idea is that, just every time it's believe. He is just trying to create positive energy, and it's believe, and it's changing I can't to I can. I mean, literally, it's that easy as crossing off the T. So, right, as we think about our vision to action and think about what we can and can't do and all that, I guess I kind of just, I'm gonna run through. I think I have enough time. Well, I don't, but I do want to share 2 more slides, right? Which is, in one of our engagements, we used this particular survey, to get at more of, and leaving you with the concept of internal versus external customer. Our first job as Rotarians, we may not think about it, but is to take care of our internal customers, which is our members, right? So understanding what our members' expectations are, because think about this, how can we be good outside if we're not great inside? And, so some simple questions. Why am I here? What do I hope to get out of it? Some very, very basic questions. And what I wanted to share as kind of a final piece of this is, here are some of the answers. Why am I here at Rotary? In this particular club, a lot of people couldn't answer that or didn't feel like answering that. This is where I kind of get to that idea of the most basic stuff, perhaps, we don't really know about our club members. And our job really as leadership is to serve our club members, to make sure that they're happy. So that's the stuff where you kind of go, well, of course, this is just so damn trivial, we don't even bother to ask. And what I'm sharing is that this is very common. So, you wouldn't necessarily see it, but I want to leave you with that stark reality that what you think you know, you probably don't. And because of that, it's creating a lot of issues within your club. So I'm going to stop on that, because we're there's others in the rest of the slides. I had a couple of, there's, some interesting things that I was kind of hoping to talk about in regards to customers and value proposition. But I think we kind of got to a good stopping point there. So there's lots more to do in the world of strategy and planning and execution. It's, we can just keep going. But anyway, I would love to leave just kind of the last minute or 2 open for, right, if anybody's got anything to share, any last comments. It's been a pleasure to go through this. I love this stuff. So, hopefully everybody gets a takeaway or 2 to take back to their clubs. And I'll leave you with my, kind of 2020 kind of default to smile, right? I think we should drop these everywhere, but
Once again, we're happy to take questions. There is a 10-minute break before you log into your next session. We thank you all for participating. Thank you very much, Matt Smith, for the presentation. Thank you, Governor Frank. If there's anything that comes to mind after the session, you can reach out to Matt or myself or anyone on the leadership team, and we can get you pointed in the right direction for visioning to action and building your strategic plan. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. And if you are in diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's this room. So you can stay logged in, or if you have another session, you can go log into that session. So thank you very much for participating.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much, Matt and Susan, for the presentation. It was wonderful. Lots to think about. And I'm just so glad to see so many people joining us today for all of these sessions, and just keep up all the great work you're doing for Rotary. And Anne will be ready for you in about 6 weeks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Frank.
All right, see you in a bit.
Right back at you, sir.
Hey, Susan, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, that's awesome. I just want to let you know that I will be introducing Kate.
Okay. So were you trying to reach Susan? I replied to you just to let you know I could hear you.
Oh, okay, no problem. That's Ruth. Okay, I didn't see that. Yeah, it's okay. She's probably coming on soon.
I am here. I just will be 1 minute, okay?
No problem.
All right, thank you. Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, good. Sorry, we're just dealing with a few technical challenges in between switching sessions. I apologize for not being front and center for you. And we still have people joining. We are scheduled to start at 10:25. And Kate, are you here with us? Kate?
I am.
There
Thank
are.
you.
Okay, sorry. Trying to look. at my-
Ignore all of my emails.
Nope, I just spoke to, believe me. We've been calling and texting, trying to make sure everything's working. It's the first time we've done something on this scale with this number of Zoom accounts and switching back and forth. So while we would have loved it to be flawless, we've got a couple of glitches we're gonna have to work out if we try and do something like this again. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
Not a problem. I was worried that I was going to, that I couldn't get in, so.
No,
I wrote you several emails, so just ignore them.
Nope, we're all good. We're just gonna wait for everyone to join. We have a few more minutes. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves if you want to chat. I'm gonna continue to work on the technical issues here, but I will be back promptly in 3 minutes.
This is the diversity session, right?
Correct. This is the
Okay.
diversity session. You
Okay.
are correct. And actually, I will go back to sharing so that Kate can get started. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, then we will be good to go in 2 more minutes. Welcome, everyone. We will get started momentarily. We still have a few people signing in. Okay, it is 10:25. Kate, I missed the conversation earlier, so I don't know if you wanted to start and introduce yourself or if someone is introducing you.
Hi, it's Lenore. I'm director at the Rotary Club of St. Catharines, and I have the privilege of introducing Kate Sims to us. A 14-year member of the Manchester Rotary Club, Kate is a past district governor and has held numerous positions in her club. She currently holds both membership and interact chair at club level. Kate was instrumental in leading the HDI Memorial Project, where $100,000 was raised for a memorial garden in honor of those who have lost their lives in a workforce shooting. Additionally, she led a VTT global grant with South Africa with the focus on neonatal abstinence syndrome and fetal alcohol syndrome to further our knowledge and decrease associated stigma. Kate has recently held the chair of Northeastern Pets and is an assistant Rotary coordinator for Zone 32 for membership, focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Kate has over 40 years of healthcare experience and is married to her husband, Calvin, where they have 4 children and 1 grandson. Welcome, Kate, and we look forward to your presentation.
We can't hear you, Kate.
Thank you so much. I was on mute. Thank you. Well, I'm very excited and thankful to join the meeting today and to engage in the discussion of diversity, equity, and inclusion, also known as DEI. So for today's presentation, I want to ask each of you to listen with the intent to understand, to be open to learn a bit more about ourselves, and to be a little bit vulnerable. As we dive into the understanding of DEI, it means what DEI means to support other and learning to be more transparent with each other. So let's get started on DEI, and I want each of you to evaluate as we talk today and as we have this discussion, does your club reflect your community? So keep that in the back of your mind as we talk. Next. So I want to talk about the Rotary as a global network, right? Rotary International has adopted the diversity and inclusion statement. And this is their diversity and inclusion statement. It values diversity, celebrates the contributions of all backgrounds. So as we explore tonight's session, we're going to focus on the definitions, again, gaining understanding. Next. So diversity includes the ways in which people differ, encompassing the different characteristics that make one individual or group different from another. Where equity is the fair treatment, access, opportunity for advancement for all people, while at the same time striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of some groups. And then inclusion is the act of creating environments in which any individual group can feel welcome, respected, supported, and valued to fully participate. Next. So the definition of diversity refers to the similarities and differences that define us as human beings. Next. And diversity puts us in boxes. Inclusion lets us be human. In our global enterprises, we as Rotarians span multiple countries, languages, generations, cultures, and socioeconomic backgrounds. So how do we turn our varied clubs into inclusive environments that maximize individual capacity? Diversity does not automatically lead to inclusion. Next. So this just depicts a picture to show what diversity is and what inclusion is, and what people often look at diversity and say, well, we have, a member of color, or we have an Asian or Indian in our club, so therefore we're diverse. And so diversity and inclusion are two different things. And this picture sort of detects, demonstrates what that looks like. Next. So equity is defined as the state, quality, or ideal of being just, impartial, and fair. The concept of equity is synonymous with the fairness and justice. It's helpful to think of equity as not simply a desired state of affairs or a lofty value to be achieved and sustained. Equity needs to be thought of as a structural and systemic concept. So equity versus equality, they're not equal. And that's often where we have difficulty, where we look at equity and equality saying they're equal. So I want to explore that just a little bit more. Next. So diversity is not the same as inclusion. Equity is not the same as equality. Equality is the state of being equal, while equity is the quality of being fair. And this picture, I think, helps denote a little bit more. Feel free to use this. And by the way, everyone will have access to these slides if you feel that that would be helpful in your clubs. Next. I put a few examples in here to use at your clubs. So as we understand, not everyone has the understanding and the language or understands the difference. And I'm just going to use the second one as an example. So an example of equality, a community meeting where all members of the community are invited about a local environmental health concern, and it's held in English, though English is not the primary language for 25% of the residents. Where equity, the community leaders hire translators to attend a meeting and offer an additional meeting held in another language. Again, another example of equality versus equity. I think it's really important as we move into diversity, equity, and inclusion to really understand the language, right? Because often using the language is where we get defensive and we look at things and say, you know, we personalize things. And so it's really important as we go through this that we're going to really look at the definitions first, and then we're going to get into bias and isms. Next. So the definition of inclusion, the climate we create to help organization and individuals benefit from diversity of ideas, knowledge, and experience. Next, it's a sense of belonging. It's a feeling respected, valued, seen for who we are as individuals. And there's a level of supportive energy and commitment from leaders, colleagues, and others so that we individually and collectively can do our best work. So inclusion is active. It's a system for making sure that organizations are welcoming at every level and every individual. Inclusion is a skill. It's one that needs to be learned, practiced, and mastered by every leader. Next. So if we look at diversity, equity, inclusion, this one makes it a little simple to understand. Diversity is being invited to the dance. Equity is playing music so we can all dance. And inclusion is being asked to dance. Next, so we're going to get into a little bit about unconscious bias. So unconscious bias, it's every day, it's automatic, it's hardwired, and none of us are immune. We don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. Unconscious bias are assumptions and stereotypes that influence our attitudes. It's our upbringing and the culture in which we were raised that shapes our biases. Bias is a preference or prejudice for or against one person or a group. It's unconscious feelings we all have toward other people or groups that are often developed throughout our lives and associated with what we've learned or been taught and impact our perception, our attitude, and our behavior. And this can be both positive or negative. The key is less about recognizing the bias you already know and more about channeling and identifying those that you're not aware of. And we all have them. We all have our biases. Next. So let's look at our biases and let's be aware of them. Be curious versus judgmental. Listen for understanding. I think the most important thing is to really look at ourselves individually and understand that each one of us has biases. Find out what yours are. Gain understanding of who you are and why you feel that way, and then you'll be able to recognize it. So focus within, tune into your own emotions, recognize your experience and how it shaped your perspective. I'll be honest with you, last night I went into one of those little quick stops. I went in, my husband called me on the way home from work and said, hey, can you pick me up a glass of Coke, a bottle of Coke? And I was like, okay. So I stopped, unfamiliar with the area, unfamiliar with the site. And when I walked in, it was different. And I found myself looking over my shoulder and I found myself looking around. And I recognized last night, again, that was a bias of mine. I was uncomfortable because I was in an area that I was not familiar with. And I started feeling emotions. And I recognized my own bias. I shamed myself. But I recognized it, and again, it's recognizing it, and it's really looking inwardly and saying, what do I own, why, and then understanding what you're doing. So really, really understand, again, tune into your own emotions. And this is about you. It's not about others, right? Stick to the facts. Don't make assumptions. Learn about others. Recognize how their experience have shaped their perspective. Consider how they might see the situation and what is important to them. And think about how your actions must have impacted them. Engage in dialogue, ask open-ended questions, listen for understanding, not to debate, to understand. Offer your views about offer your views without being defensive or combative. And remember to avoid blame and think about contribution. And then finally, it is brainstorm for possible solutions, be flexible about different ways that each of you can come up with a common goal, and seek out diverse perspectives. So this is really about opening up our minds to really understand, bring awareness about people who don't look like us or talk like us, so that we can gain understanding and learn to collaborate and work together. Next. If you haven't already done so, I would ask you to go out on the Harvard Project Implicit. This is where you can go on. If you just click on there, it'll take you to a link. It's got many, many, many unconscious bias links that you can go on and take tests to find out about yourself. It's confidential. No one's going to know. You'll get your results back, but it gives you an aha moment, if you will. And I think it's important really to go in here and to look at this. I've done it and I've looked at myself and said, well, okay, I'm aware of that. I wasn't as acutely aware, but I think it's really important. So feel free to do that. I think it's very helpful. And as the team starts to engage in DEI in your clubs, you might ask everybody in your club to do this as well. So it'll be a conversation piece and you can talk openly about, if you feel comfortable, about how your results came out. Next. So now I want to talk about what is your ism. We all have them. Next. Ageism, sexism, racism, ableism. There's lots of isms, but I'm going to talk to 4 or 5 that I see from a Rotarian, and I see as Rotarians sometimes that filter into our club meetings or district meetings or zone meetings, or even our Rotary International meetings. So ageism, prejudice, and discrimination on the basis of a person's age. Sexism, discrimination on the basis of a person's sex or gender. Racism, this is against someone who's a different race. And then ableism, intent or unintentional discrimination of individuals with disabilities. Next, so let's talk a little bit about ageism. Who's heard the phrase male, pale, and stale? So I want to talk about impact, intent versus impact. So what do we think when you said what you think you may have said, what has been heard? Intent versus impact. So perhaps when you say male, pale, and stale.
You're muted again.
I am so sorry about that. Where did I leave off? If you might, Jessica might
At the beginning.
At the very beginning of the presentation?
No, at the
The male, pale, stale part.
Got it. Okay. All right. So who's heard the word male, pale, and stale? Right. I'll never forget the first time I heard that. I was like, oh dear. Right. And I took a chance at a zone conference. I actually presented this page because I was offended for our elderly members that were sitting in the audience when I first heard it. So this is going to be about intent versus impact. So what do you think? What you think you said may not be what they heard, right? So perhaps when you say male, pale, and stale, some of our elder Rotarians feel old, unappreciated, and perhaps disrespected. I remember when I did a presentation, I didn't use the phrase in my presentation, but I did talk about the younger generation. And an elder member shared with me that they were offended. So I had to change my presentation. My intent was different than my impact. And I had to change and use different words in order to present. So from an ageism, it's prejudice or discrimination against a particular age group, right? And as Rotary ages out, we have to remember and we have to respect the knowledge and the commitment of Rotarians. You know, the elderly the men in our organizations brought this organization to where it is. We can't let that history go, right? We need to respect and recognize, you know, what was important to the elderly when they did it was attending meetings, 100%. We have to respect that even though we're moving forward, going through that change. So we have to be careful in how we use our words when it comes to ageism. Next. Sexism, prejudice, stereotyping, or discrimination, typically against women, or it's both sexes. But what we're seeing now as well is, you know, as we look at the LGBTQ and how is sexism with others and feeling uncomfortable with people choosing what sexual preference they have. So does anyone think that this happens in Rotary? Women, you know, have you been called honey, sweetie? Come here and let me give you a smack on the lips. You know, there's many things that some have or haven't, you know, heard, but we need to be careful, again, in the way in which we present ourselves, that we need to be careful that we are not offending each other. In 1987, women were accepted in Rotary. In 2023, we'll have our first woman Rotary president, 36 years later. Where men and women work together to expand and build on existing strengths with the benefits of diversity to improve the lives of individuals and communities in a way consistent with the RI strategic plan. Let me tell you a short story. We lost a president in our club this year. She was an African-American woman who saw a post on Facebook that an award was given out to a past president. So it's a customary event that happens, but the president doesn't. She wasn't asked, rather told without consideration that she might want to do this. And the end result is she left because she felt minimized by the men in the club. And she also felt minimized that she was an African woman and that perhaps that was part of it as well. So she felt it from both being African-American as well as being a woman. So again, it was intent versus impact. The intent was not to do that, but the impact was she left our club. Next. So racism, prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against someone of different race based on their beliefs or their look. So on October 3rd of 2020, Rotary adopted the Stand on Racism. But like with women in Rotary, we don't have 36 years to wait. We don't have 36 years to look at DEI. We just don't have that time left. So I'll share with you my personal story. So I am married to my husband who is of color. He is an African-American. I've heard things like, we're diverse. Kate has a husband who's Black. Or perhaps you've heard, oh, we're diverse. We have an Asian in our club. So when we say that, again, we have to look at that intent versus impact. When I introduce my husband or tell people that my husband is Black, I might hear things like, oh, I have a good friend who is Black. Or they might say, I don't see color. And I say, I sure do. I don't know why you don't see color, because I see my husband is Black every morning I wake up, right? So again, it's the intent versus the impact as we're trying to defend ourselves about not seeing color, not being racist. But we have to remember that sometimes what we say can affect the other person. So we have to listen for understanding. Again, this is about impact versus intent And it's about understanding and getting to know how we deal with things, what we say, and how that affects others. And finally, we have ableism. So some comments you might hear like, oh my goodness, this is a long walk. Sally, can I borrow your wheelchair? Or you have it easy, you're in a wheelchair. Or perhaps you don't look disabled, right? Again, intent versus impact. And so we have to be careful there with intent versus impact. And one of the other things that I want to share with you is, as we talk about intent versus impact, let's talk about being a bystander or an upstander. How many of us have sat in a Rotary Club meeting and heard someone tell a joke or heard someone say offensive, whether it be about a woman or whether it be about, a gay couple or whether it be about someone who is disabled. And we've sat by and apologized to the person who was offended afterwards. So we were a bystander allowing this versus an upstander saying it's unacceptable. I don't know about you, but I've been a bystander and I've changed my mind and I've become an upstander. And I won't apologize to the person being offended, but rather I'll talk to the person who's offending. And I think it's important that we, look for understanding of what a bystander and what an upstander looks like. Next. So we really need to go from here, challenges to drive our clubs from here, from discrimination, right? We need to lead by example. We need to listen for understanding. And then we need to go to next here. We need to come to our comfort zone, right? We need to look at unique perspectives, treat people with fairness, look at openness, opportunity, welcome people. And so again, this is really about, one of my favorite sayings here is what you permit, you promote, right? So if we're sitting in a club and we're watching others and we're not standing up and saying, I can't accept the bad jokes that we continue to tell, right? Or if we're not standing up, then what we permit, we promote as Rotarians. And I think it's important that we take a stand and we look in the mirror and look at ourselves. So we may not be the ones who are offensive, but if we're not being an upstander and we're not sharing our views on that, then we're permitting that behavior and we're avoiding people from wanting to come join our Rotary clubs that look different from us. Next. So is your club relevant to the members and to our communities? Next. Do you target women, young professionals, different ethnic groups, non-traditional professionals, the LGBTQ? Next. When we look at diversity questions for your Rotary Club, do the demographics of your Rotary Club match the demographics of your community? Have you done a community assessment? Do you have people who look like you, or do you have people that look like your community? Probably most places, two different areas. Age, race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, economic, career, handicapped. Is there bias in seeking new members? Is there an active plan to increase diversity? I like the economic one, right? Can everybody afford to be a Rotarian? The answer is yes. You need to look, do you have all the members in your community that need to be there? Do you really have, again, my biggest one is, does your club reflect your community? Right? If we're doing community work and we're out in the community, are we there as Rotarians patting our back and said, yep, we donated to this today? Or do we really understand? Have we walked a mile in someone else's shoes? Do we really understand what the need is? Because if we're really diverse and out there in our community, we're bringing everyone in and we're hearing where they're coming from and we're helping them. And I think we have opportunity there. Next. Equity questions for your Rotary Club. Is your meeting accessible to all? The place, is it handicap accessible? Is it time accessible? Is it cost accessible? Do you have alternative meetings and times? Is there an ethnic bias to your meeting, to your menus? Do you offer hybrid meetings? Does everyone have technology capabilities to join your Zoom meetings? Is it non-political? Is it non-denominational? Does it reflect spiritual versus specific religious prayers versus moments of reflection versus Rotary moments? Next. Inclusion questions for your Rotary Club. Are all members involved in at least 2 committees or activities? Are new members assigned a mentor? Is every member considered for leadership? Are members invited to participate or just an announcement from the podium? And again, we talked about this: accessibility, date, time, location, physical accessibility, etc. Next. So when we look at the age and personalization, Rotary, we're stuck between the age of standardization and our new personalization. So have we built a culture that is agnostic to differences? We have our weekly meetings, dinners, standard meetings, or are we going to make it e-club, more personalization? Has our thinking, our vision, our systems been so dependent on focusing on standardization that we haven't provided the room for personalization? Individuals are no longer inclined to hide their diversity or feel pressured to fit into the standard version of mainstream. And if we want to influence our organization and marketplace, how do we lead in the age of personalization? Again, my question is, does your club reflect your community?
Kate,
Yes.
we have a couple of questions in the chat. Can we reference those for a minute?
Us? Sure.
So is there a demographic diversity questionnaire that you can share?
We are working at one from the zone, but I can check with Rotary International. I know at the zone, we're working on one right now. And I think that actually is going to be pushed out from a Rotary International perspective as well. I just don't think it's out right now. I know that Valerie Wafer is leading the diversity, and we've talked about this. I've been asked, about the demographics from my perspective, so I've had input into it.
Okay, and the other question is, how do we need to change our practices so that more diverse individuals feel that it is a welcoming place?
So I think we talk about that, right? So I would ask you to reflect on your club, right? When you walk in, do you feel it's welcoming just from your perspective? And do you feel that, a person of color would be welcome? Do you feel a person who's Asian would be welcome, like different cultures? Like, you have to evaluate, and I think this is where it's really good to have that club discussion. I'll share a story with you. When our president left and our club just was, just astounded, like they couldn't believe she left. And I remember saying, what do you mean you can't believe she left? She's a woman of color and she's a woman. And they were like, so what? And I'm like, I had to share my own feelings as a woman, but I'm a strong woman. Right. And so when I was the president, I didn't let anything bother me. I blew it off. But there's been so many women that have left our club because of the way they're treated by men. When we had this conversation, I realized that no one really was ever honest with the men in our club. They didn't really ever tell them how one feels. Rather, what happened was people just kept leaving. They kept leaving. And so we're working on it now. We're asking our club members to go on and take their biases, to really start to seek some understanding of internally what they do and how they contribute to this. Because we may think everything's fine, but look back in history or talk to people who have left and seek some understanding on why they left. And I will share with you, we've had, between the young people and women, we've had at least 20 people leave over the last couple of years because of how they're treated. Not such a good thing. So I think it's really going to be a reflection of you and your club to really have an open, transparent dialogue. And I think quite honestly, if you take the bias test and come talk about that openly, that's a place to start.
There's one question. I'm not sure where the echo is coming from. How did you share the information with the men in your club?
How do we, sorry, can you repeat
How
that?
did you share the information with the men in your club?
Oh, you know what? It was a tough discussion, right? I had to not only share, when it came up, I remember sharing just how I felt. And I shared with them, I said, how many times did I get up and make a presentation? And I said, I was, if I was doing a presentation, someone would correct me. And the person who did, he raised his hand, he said, Kate, I did that to you all the time. He said, I remember how rude it was. I did it to you all the time. You're right. So we had, again, that open, transparent conversation. There's still a couple of men that say, not me, not me. It's no way, not me, right? So their hands up. And those are the men who are just not open to look in the mirror. And then there are men that have really gone so far forward that it's just been amazing. I will share with you, and I'll tell you a story. I had an aha moment, and this is going to open it up as well. And I told a story that night as well. And it's not just about men here, but this is about sort of like looking in the mirror. So my husband and I were at a Rotary holiday party, and we and 4 other couples were in a room in the back, and we were chatting. And these other 4 couples are all 4 Jewish couples that are friends of ours. And we were at a Christmas party. And so we were chatting, and they wanted to know what it was like to be in a interracial marriage. And they wanted to know what life was like, and, you know, was it hard, and just asking lots of questions. And we got into really deep dialogue, and 2 hours into this conversation, I had my aha moment of what white privilege meant. Now, mind you, I'm married to my husband and been with him, 30 some years, right? And I would get offended when people use the word white privilege. And here's my aha moment. One of my friends, Jewish woman, said, you know what? I was always thankful that I was born Jewish and that I wasn't born Black, because I can hide being Jewish, but you can't hide being Black. And that, my friends, for me, was my aha moment. That for me was, I can walk out of my front door, I can get in my car, I can drive anywhere I want, I can do anything I want, and I have that freedom to do anything I want without being judged, without someone asking me what my nationality is or treating me different because I look Asian or Black or anything else. That for me was my aha moment. That's when I accepted and said, I understand what white privilege means. Never like the word, right? We don't like a lot of words, but if we understand the why behind things, we start to then understand a little bit better where we need to go to really open our hearts and our minds about our own biases, and to welcome people in that don't look and feel like us, that may be different. I share that story because it was such an aha moment for me. It was where I really started to reflect a little bit more and to be a little bit more careful about things I said and did, and how I present this presentation, most importantly. So I'm going to go to the next. So recommendations, go to the next. For recommendations, if you don't in your club have this, increase DEI awareness and knowledge through Rotary Club meetings and district support. I will tell you that there's a lot of momentum right now in Rotary with DEI. Really, what we're working on right now, I'll be honest, we just had a meeting yesterday. What we're working on right now is really having a toolkit for DEI. So like we did today, really going through the definitions, talking about biases, and then talking about isms, right? We've got to be transparent. We've got to talk about these things. If we just talk about, racism and say, oh, we have it out there, it means nothing. So let's break it down. Let's talk about these definitions. Let's talk about our biases. Let's be aware of them. We all have them. You know, I say this to people all the time. I'm married to my husband. He is African American, and we have 4 biracial children. I have biases, if that helps anyone. It's just something we are all, it was how we were raised. It's who we are. It's recognizing them and acting on them. That's the difference.
Kate,
Yes.
we have someone with their hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself. If you have a question, thank you.
Are you talking about Amina? Are you?
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry, I couldn't read the
you
name.
said someone. You said
I'm
someone.
sorry, I couldn't read the name. Go ahead,
Okay.
please.
Yeah, there's a long conversation. I want to thank you first of all for having this, and I want to thank you first of all for being the catalyst. I'm the pink elephant in the room conversationalist, so I'm the one that kind of comes out and says things that maybe we're not saying and we're dancing around and we're kind of being comfortable about it. So I want to thank you for saying all that you're saying. But let me ask you something. I'm just going to ask you one question, and maybe since we talked about bias, since we talked about conversation and wording, have we ever thought about the intersectionality of cultural competency? And this is having the conversation about diversity from diverse people.
Mm-hmm.
This is, okay, you're married to a Black man, but how about putting a Black man on the conversation? How about speaking to the man that is the one that is being aggressed in society, that cannot hide their color, cannot hide how they're going to be treated when they walk into a room of people that are uncomfortable with having a Black man in the room, or a Black woman for that matter?
Sure.
How about speaking from the voice of that person rather than using this single story mindset that is very comfortable in this fragility that we're trying to get out of?
Sure.
So I ask these questions, and I know I said one, but I ask these questions because this is the direction that I wish to see, because I was going to be number 21 to leave Rotary because it is not very inclusive at all, period. I think I got in because my grandfather was a Rotarian, but he was Jewish. And looking at my skin and listen to that story, you wouldn't know that. But
Sure.
to know that is to know that he came in under that umbrella. And of course, we grandfathered in all of us. But the premise in this is to know that he still would speak a different tone in his club because he's comfortable in his club. But to know to bring his evidently very African-American child, and we don't even use that term anymore. We use people of color, so it's all inclusive, which is intentional. We don't say Black or Asian or whatever because we exclude people when we just use certain variables. So we say people of color. And in knowing that bias is there is to know that most people are not welcoming of others in their community because others in their community don't feel welcome to go in there. So it's not necessarily the group members. It's not the Rotarians. You know, when you said, look at your biases and see, is it welcoming? Of course you feel it's welcoming because it's welcoming to you. So of course you're feeling it's welcoming. And of course you're feeling that the welcome mat is laid out for everyone. But if they don't feel that there is a reason for them to go in that building, there is an offset to the intentional marketing or advertisement. If there is an offset to the price where it's priced out of certain communities, then how can they come in? So it's the intersectionality of this diversity and inclusion that we have to look at. It is the thing that not just, okay, we're going to open the door and people of color are going to walk in and they're going to be happy and healthy. And no, that's a fairy tale. That's very rose color, very privileged statements. But what we're looking at is what is in that club that's going to make me feel like there is something there for me. Is there people there that look like me, that vibrate with me, that are able to see me in that light? Are they going to welcome my talents, gifts, and abilities, or am I just a check mark on the ethics statement? Am I going to be that person that's going to help? I'm an encore president now at Rotary 7090, Resi 7090. And because of that as I at first thought that they asked me to stay on because I was the only one. But the second thing was, you know what? I'm going to utilize that to now make this diversity, equity, and inclusion more intersectional. So I did sign up for the group. So you'll see me there in the meetings. I did sign up to make sure that that component of it is there with a very powerful voice. But I want to ask are these questions that you're going to be putting out there? Because I may be wasting my time if we're not putting those things on the table, and if we're just sugarcoating, religion versus spiritual, and we need to talk about the things we need to talk about, and we need to get honest with it and stop being so afraid of it. And I think that's why we don't talk about it, because we're afraid. We don't know where that conversation is going to go. We don't know what that's going to mean for us. And we don't know how our feelings are. And why are we doing all this? It's just making me uncomfortable. And, all of these tangents that are happening. It's good the way it is. Why do we need to change anything? We heard that with COVID. We heard that, why do we need to change anything? We heard that with the race riots back in the 60s. But it's the point that we have to change. And what is it that we're doing to make the person feel warm, comfortable, and welcome in the same breath in our community, because we really want to have them there, not because it's the difference between inclusion and being added on. Inclusion
Absolutely.
is in the programming. Added on is just, you can come too.
Sure.
Right. And that's how people of color are feeling. You can come too. Yeah, you could be the +1. No, I want the personal invite.
Sure.
You see what I mean? So
I
thank
do.
you.
No,
Thank
I
you.
do see what you mean, and I appreciate your comments, and I'll try to answer as best I can. If I left
Sure.
out anything, please let me know.
Sure.
So yes, I actually, do you know Dr. Todd Jenkins from Rotary International?
Todd Jenkins. Name sounds familiar. Maybe I haven't had a
Okay,
conversation.
so he is a man of color, Rotarian, and he actually does, he's on the diversity, equity, inclusion of Rotary International. He
Great.
also does several segments. I'd ask you to go ahead and Google him if you can. He does many, and they're just dynamic. He does, what's the word I'm looking for? He's got multiple people on, and they chat. And when he does this, they're all men and women of color. And he
Nice.
yes, and I will tell you, it's dynamic. If you haven't joined them, please join them. You can go on his site. He's actually speaking for one of our districts, one of our clubs in Glastonbury next week. He does his presentations. He does this, quite honestly, for a living, and he does it as well for Rotary International. He is on the team. The second part that I want to share with you is I actually talked to Valerie Wafer from Rotary International, and I shared with her that my husband is a Kappa, and that they're doing a learn to live. They do a program, unfortunately, teaching young Black men how to properly be pulled over by a policeman, right? Which is absurd for a white person to hear, because we don't get that, right? I do, because I raised my son of color. I don't get it as a woman of color. I get it as a white woman raising a son of color. But so in any case, I talked to her and I talked to the Kappas, and they're actually going to get together and meet and talk about how we can start bringing, this Kappa group and Rotary together to really talk about what else can we do to like move this off of, as what you're saying, this conversation, and how do we move it forward? So we're trying, we're trying different things, but
that's where you need to stop.
Yeah,
we have to stop trying. We have to do. We have to
Agreed.
commit.
Agreed.
These are words. It's
Yep.
not what can Rotary do. It's what will we commit to? What will we do? And these are the ways that we move forward. We're always trying. I mean, every time we invite one person in the group that's not of color, you're trying. But then when they leave, how is that working for you? How is that effective for the group?
Yep.
So, we can always try, but we have to use new words. We are going to commit to. Let's sit down and talk about what we are going to commit to, and what is it going to look like once we commit. These are the questions. These are the statements. So, okay.
Would you also be interested if I gave Valerie your name as an interested party as well?
Of course. But I want those people speaking for the diversity and inclusion. Why can't they be the spokesperson for diversity and inclusion for Rotary? Or why can't they be that face so that people can see? Because I don't hear diversity if the same, and I hate to say this, but the same person that made you sick is going to now make you better. I don't see the seeming trend of where the diversity falls if there is the same voice that is the one that doesn't welcome us in the club is the same one that's now speaking about diversity and inclusion. That's like that to me and I say the voice as in the race, not the person.
Sure.
But I say
Sure.
that in saying that doesn't come across as really authentic. It's a single story. It's my version of what I think you're feeling and what you're going through, rather than just asking and letting our voice be heard. And I think that that's where people of color are now at that point, where it's not about, being welcome to the table. We're going to create our own tables. But when we do that, then it looks like it's a separatism or a separate. No, we're just going to create our own avenues again. We're going to create our own Rotary, or, I'm AKA. And the AKAs are ones to want to do that. We want to have a social inclusion group. And again, social inclusion. So it's socially inclusive of the person, of the people. And then I'm looking at that. I'm saying, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want you to put together a Black Rotarian group. I don't need that. I need a Rotarian group that white folks are comfortable with and Asian folks and everybody else are comfortable with. That's what I want. But when I see that Rotary is pretty much doing that we're try, we can, we're hoping and all that. Sure. Then that lets me know that those are the words that are still being used also. So it's like the lesser of two evils. I don't know. I just, my passions are great. My intentions are great. I have children and grandchildren coming behind me that's going to be in Rotary. And I need this to be a mainstay, not something we talk about because it's in vogue and, Black Lives Matter and all that. I don't need that to be that.
Yep, agreed.
I need this to be a mainstay, and that's why I'm working with it. And I hope, I don't know. Thank you. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for hearing. I appreciate it. You'll hear more.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Kate.
Yes.
There's a couple more questions I need you to address before we go past this slide. So can you please restate that person's name in Rotary International that you were just talking about? What is his name?
Sure. It's Dr. Todd Jenkins. He goes by, and his nickname is, or he goes by Bowtie. So if you see Bowtie, Bowtie, it might say Dr. Todd Bowtie Jenkins. But if you Google him, fabulous, not only website, fabulous information, and you can jump on and hear him. He's fantastic.
Okay, and what is Kappa?
Kappa is a fraternity, and it is a men of color fraternity. So
Kappa Alpha Psi.
Kappa Alpha Psi. Yep, and they do a lot of work. It's a national and probably it's a fraternity, men of color, and they do a lot of work with community as well as their young men of color education and promoting them for education and life forward. One of the programs that they do, again, I'll speak to it, is Learn to Live. And it's quite sobering when you look at it and see what's being taught and what has to be taught in order for men of color to actually feel that they're safe driving a car, which is, again, super sad to even think about that. And when it was so profound, for me to witness it as a white person, but I really thought that hearing that, seeing that would be profound for every other white Rotarian, as I took it. That I just thought it was a good connection, and I am hopeful that we can move forward in a more trajectory state, if you will.
And one other question, how do you sign up for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, or how can people reach out to be on that committee?
Yeah, so this is for the international. I don't know, I will ask Valerie if they're still taking people on the international one, but there are zone committees as well and districts. So as we start to create zone and district committees, Susan, if you can send me your zone and districts, I can send you out all of the information regarding both of those, and then you can distribute it to your members.
Okay.
But in zone 32, I am on the membership, but more specifically the DEI. So I can send information out on all of that and then allow you all to reach out as needed.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay.
Can I just make a quick comment? My name is Heather, and I'm from District 7070. And I currently we do within our district have a DEI committee, and I am the chair on that committee. So we have established a strategic plan and everything else, and our committee has been going really strong. We're fortunate that Valerie Wafer was from our district. So I do have a lot of that connection there. And I have spoken several times to Dr. Bowtie, and he has presented several times for our club as well. So the key thing that you had said initially about the survey and the club survey on how your club views things from a DEI perspective, there are within my Rotary, there's a lot of courses out there on DEI that I recommend everybody to take, every member to take. There's even a survey on there that you can take that we recommend clubs have their members take. We have created a district survey, which we had put out to our entire district. We actually had it sent out via Club Runner. So it was one of those things, if you're signed up to Club Runner, you got it. If you didn't get it, unfortunately. We actually had the results analyzed by a second party, so we weren't involved. We contacted our local university in the area and went right to a stats department and asked if a student would be interested in analyzing our data, figuring they'd have nothing really to gain. They don't even know Rotary. So it was very, very unbiased how they put together our results. We plan on sharing the results with the membership at our 1-year anniversary that our committee has existed. And it's interesting, many of the responses that came back, why are we doing this? There's no need for DEI. There's nothing wrong. If it ain't broke, don't fix. We're opening up a can of worms. So it was very, very shocking at some of the responses that we were getting, to the point where I could tell you right now is one reason why I'm actually going to be leaving my own club at the end of the year to actually open up my own club. So I'm in the process of creating my own club to avoid any of this, and it's going to be an international club worldwide. So I get what you're all saying, and again, I'm probably speaking from a Canadian point of view. I believe I'm district or zone 28, I believe. So I've been getting a lot of emails. Valerie has referred many clubs, many districts towards the District 7070 because of what we've already started and implemented for the past year. So feel free to send me an email. I get emails all the time from different districts all over the world asking how to set up and how to establish. And we could give you different guidelines, but again, it still boils down to knowing your district, knowing your clubs, and meeting the needs of your clubs in your district. So I just wanted to share a little bit of that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heather. Appreciate that. And I think I actually think I just had one more, my final slide, I think.
Okay, hang on.
So diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, and belonging is an outcome. I did have references though. If you go just in order to share, Susan, if you go down, I believe there are a set of references here, and as Heather noted, there's opportunities on Rotary International's website. Did I include them in here?
I don't see them. I'm not, if I scroll down, I go to the next slide, so we can certainly send that out after.
All right, you know what, I can, why don't you let me share my screen?
Okay, let me stop sharing.
Okay.
And we'll then be able to share, or we could put them in the chat if you have them handy too. I will look.
Okay. So we talk about diversity. So really, these are things that what you can do. Talk about diversity with your club members. Invite local diversity, equity, and inclusion experts to speak at your club. Connect with local organizations that support diversity, equity, and inclusion in efforts to work with them on projects and events. Encourage and support people from underrepresented groups to take leadership positions. Encourage club members to take the building to a diverse club course and learning center. So this is really important. In RI, there are courses in there about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'd encourage, again, everyone to really look internally and have self-awareness so that you can be part of moving the organization forward. And then create a community advisory board. This is really important. Again, I would say this from every aspect. Thanks, Hon. A community advisory board is critically important. One is if really say that from a Rotary perspective that we are doing community work and that we are representing our community, then we really need to understand and know that we really are representing our community. And again, I would just share with you that in my district, I can tell you that most of our clubs do not represent their community. So it's one of those, again, for us to look in the mirror. So here we are on the Rotary Learning Center. Again, and I think Heather already spoke to that, but these links are here for you. If you want to go, you can just link on these and you can get all of these Rotary educational opportunities for each and every one of you. So it's moving diversity and inclusion actions, committing to DEI and inclusion, what the youth are doing in Rotary International. Again, more courses on inclusive leadership, a story about bias in America, 10 best diversity videos. So a lot of information that Rotary International has out there and has put out there while they're, again, fine-tuning their DEI under the leadership of Valerie Wafer. And at that point, I would just say that that was the end of the presentation. If there is further dialogue or questions.
I have one.
Sure.
These conversations around this subject are often difficult to have. People don't know the terminology. They don't know how to approach it. To get conversations going, what do you recommend to get these kinds of conversations started and get them going?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. You know, I've had many, and again, Dr. Ali, I'm going to share with you as a white woman being married into, a man of color and having children. I know that I cannot speak from a woman of color. What I try to do in my position for me in order to make people understand is to actually share my personal stories, because I think that that for me, I like to provoke a conversation and I like to get a conversation started. But I always ask for everyone to come really with an open mind that if I said something offensive, if I made you uncomfortable, then I did my job. And I truly believe that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I do that purposely, right? I do that purposely because I want people to know this is an uncomfortable conversation, but we have to stop avoiding it. and we have to have it. And then we have to stop being defensive while we're in there having it. You know, we have to seek to understand, and we have to have awareness about each and every one of us. You know, and I appreciate, you know, that this is my story. I get it. And sometimes I feel like my story does help, right? And then sometimes, you know, it may not. You know, and I'll share, you know, again, I can share one story as, again, a white woman, but when I share it, sometimes I get that aha moment from other white people. I'm being careful how I say this, to say, I never thought of it. I never knew that. I get it. And so my approach may be a little bit different, but I'm trying to help move people forward. So use your stories, use, you know, whatever knowledge you can, but the biggest thing is have that difficult conversation. So I will share with you that I was on a panel discussion, Dr. Ali, I was on the panel discussion, one of Todd Jenkins' panel discussions, and in that, they asked me my story. And so here's my story. When my son was 3 months old, I dropped him off at the daycare that I dropped all of my other children off at. And when I dropped him off in the morning, a young woman took him in. And I went back 8 hours later to get my son, who I was told was not there. And you can imagine when a mom dropped her 3-month son off and was told he was not there, what that environment was like. It took them quite some time to find my son, and they found in a corner stuffed away because the woman who took him didn't believe in interracial marriages and didn't want to take care of a Black child.
Okay, and I thank you for that. But I empathize, and that's where I guess I'm going with this conversation. It's the storyline is your story. Now, if you're uncomfortable about the conversation, imagine living in that. How you have to live in an environment that's uncomfortable, and that's where your son is. But that would not have happened to a white child. So this is where I'm talking about. Let that son speak.
I understand that.
I
understand.
Let him speak. And that's where I think the power comes in, because the young lady asked, how do we have those conversations? The conversations come because you want the conversations to happen.
Yeah.
You know, they say, if you build it, they will come. You also say, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. So you have to want the conversation. You can't just do it because it's in vogue. You have to really be interested in having other people in your group that doesn't look like you.
I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%, but this is a start, right? And so your information is helping me, but my information is also helping others get to where they need to be.
I'm not
I agree with you 100%.
See, this is where the uncomfortability is. I never discounted anything you said.
Oh, no, I hear you.
But you keep saying, but my story is, so that means that there's an uncomfortability there that may be knowledgeable to other people that are listening to you. I don't want you to hear that I'm taking the power away from you. I'm asking you to now share it with those that you're speaking about. That's all. And I'm asking for that voice to be there equally, not as a part of, equally in the planning, equally in the presentation, equally in the dissemination, so that those conversations can now be modern and up to date and very apropos for those that want to hear those conversations, because we're not going away. And if nothing else, we're emboldened now because there is a greater opportunity for us. So we want to now help you to understand what we go through, how we live, and what it is that we are seeing day to day. Not that there is a second story that needs to happen, but the single story of our voice.
Sure.
And this is where we're asking. So it's not a beginning, it's opening the door. Don't crack it and then hope we push the door. Open the door, put the welcome mat out and say, come on in, make yourself at home. When we have more communities that are allowing us to do that, to allow us to see what you have and then make ourselves comfortable in what you have, is where the conversation will now turn into an equity conversation versus a one-sided, we're gonna give you what we're comfortable with you having.
Sure.
No. That's not what we're asking for. We're asking for the equality. If we have to live together, let's live together. Let's live together. Let's not be uncomfortable and, oh, I have 2 white friends, and, you know, having those conversations where you just want to show that you're equal in this, but, you know, there's a whole lot of confirmation bias going on and intentional bias. But I think that there needs to be an understanding in Rotary effectively that is going to work immediately. Not like you say, we're trying, this is a start. And we didn't start racism on a drop of a dime, so we can't end racism on a drop of a dime. But if we are doing what we're supposed to do every single day in every single way, because we're Black every single day in every single way, if we can continue those conversations, we can open up the doors for more people to feel like that there isn't an uncomfortableness, and there won't be number 21 that leaves. And there won't be a person that, if anything, it'll be 21 that come.
Right.
You know, because we are making that effort, and we're
Yep.
doing this holistically, not just because someone is saying we need to do this in Rotary. You know, that feels really plastic and artificial. But when we naturally want it, it'll come, and more people will come. I don't know. I don't know any other way to say it, but thank you.
Thank you.
Kate, we had a couple more questions. Lenore, you had your hand up.
I did. So just two things. Back to the point, Kate, where you had mentioned that we need to address when we see it and hear it immediately. Something that I learned at work at a session recently was just to upfront say something like, "I'm sorry, did I hear you correctly?" Because that will in turn make that person think, you know, oh, right, without really calling it out and being controversial. So that's one point. So I appreciate that you talked about that. And I just want to acknowledge that's also your story. Having your son put away in a corner at daycare, that's your story. And I acknowledge that.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. I think it is important, right? As we, many people have said, as an upstander, do you call somebody out? And I think it's really, it's calling somebody out, respectfully, quietly. You don't want to make the other person feel uncomfortable as well, right? But time has gone that we have to stop apologizing to the person who is offended, right? And we have to stand up and really make sure that the behavior stops, right? The inappropriate behavior's got to stop. The bad jokes, I thought it was funny. I didn't think I was offending anybody. You got to own that behavior and you got to stop it, right? And that's all of our jobs, because it's just not right. And it doesn't make people feel comfortable coming to our clubs.
Sometimes to get it to stop, you might have to make them feel uncomfortable.
Yep, it's true. It's true.
Bless you.
Shafali, you also had your hand up, I believe, earlier. No, you're good? Okay. Anyone else? Questions? I think we could get really into a dialogue about this. I am personally trying to move a DEI initiative forward in another organization. And we really are starting with training our team on the cultural competencies, on the language, on having difficult conversations. Those are like starting points where we are going to educate ourselves and then be able to develop a more comprehensive program throughout our membership. So it is a challenge, and we need to take it up, and we need to learn how to manage it and have those conversations. And believe me, they are not easy to have, because even the language that you need to have under your belt is something that needs to be worked on. Your thoughts, Kate, on that?
No, I don't think, no further than it sounds like, Susan, was that you speaking about what you're doing, or is that someone else? Yeah.
No, that was me speaking about an initiative that I'm working on, and just the challenges that we're facing and all the work that's going into it and the training that we're going to be going through to make this other organization that I belong to more diverse, equitable, and inclusive. And
I would go with what, Dr. Ali asked, is your group diverse? Do you have do you have the right people on the committee?
Right.
Or does the committee, look like us, right? So, that definitely heard the message. Did Dr. Ali drop off? Yeah.
Yes, she did.
Okay.
She did. All right. Any other questions, comments? do we learn from this session? I know I learned a lot and I have a lot to take back, both to District 7090 and to my club. Yeah, so it's been very informative. Kate, thank you so much. This has been very much appreciated. We will be going back to the main session at 11:45. So please, when you log out of here, go back and log into the main session and we'll be wrapping up with Ann Birmingham and company back then. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, we'll see you at the main session.